Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, as the case may be. My name is Dashuan Feng. I'm the co-founder of the Platform of Dialogues on Asian Universities, DAU. My three other co-founders are Tony Chen, president of King Abdullah University of Science and Technology in Saudi Arabia, Danin Chai, president of the National University of Singapore, and Max Liu of Bloomberg News. After more than 2 years of execution, this is DAU's 7th dialogue. In planning the topic for this one, the four of us kept on asking ourselves, what would be a question that everyone wants to ask about higher education, especially higher education, especially Asia higher education? We all came to the conclusion that there is no doubt that for the past 2 decades, the universities in Asia are growing rapidly in number and in quality. Perhaps the most obvious and perhaps the least understood issue as to what it meant is that Asian universities are still moving quite substantially in the various global rankings. It is interesting that if you ask 10 people in Asia what such rankings meant to them individually, in all likelihood, you'll get 10 answers. And some of them could be contradictory. With that as background, we thought that the three distinguished guests we have invited for this 7th dialogue may be able to clear away some of the ranking conceptual cobwebs. One of them is unquestionably the pioneer of global ranking in the 21st century. His name is Professor Liu Niancai, or Nianchai Liu, of Shanghai Jiao Tong University. He founded the now world-renowned Academic Ranking of World Universities, or ARWU. The other two are presidents of 2 leading Asian universities. Now here's a big test. President Raini Warahadikushtama, I hope it's good enough, of the Institute of Technology of Bandung in Indonesia, and President Nancy Ip of Hong Kong Universities of Science and Technology, HKUST. Today's dialogue will begin with each of these 3 distinguished guests, each delivering a short presentation of their views regarding this issue. That will be followed by them with engaging in dialogue with me, my co-founders of DAU, and of course, also with the public. To start off, may I invite Nianchai, to be the first to present his views. Nianchai, the screen is yours.
Thanks, Dashuan. I'll just share my screen. It's a great pleasure to participate in this DAU7 Dialogues on Asian Universities. I'm just presenting briefly the impacts, challenges of global university rankings from my viewpoint as originally as a rank expert. I'm not doing ranking anymore myself anyway. Just a very brief history of the global university rankings. Our ranking, just mentioned by Dashuan, academic ranking of world universities, was first published in June 2003 by the Center, exactly the Center for World-Class Universities of Shanghai Jiao Tong University.
This is 20-year anniversary.
Yes, thank you. This is a 20 years anniversary. Then about a year and a half later, QS and THE published their global university ranking, they call World University Rankings, in November 2004. Since then, more than a dozen, or some say 20, multi-indicator global ranking of university have appeared. but you must note that the global university ranking, global rankings of programs like MBA, EMBA, and many other programs have been existing for many years before these we call multi-indicator global university rankings. So this is a brief history of the global university rankings. There's a very important point I want to make is the variations in ranking results. There's always a big debate on this. Although many major rankings use very different methodologies, some relying on reputation survey, some depending on the third-party objective data, but the majority of their top universities are the same. And the top percentage is significantly higher for the top 20. And different ranking methodologies, of course, as I just said, may result in very different, sometimes conflicting results, depending on the dimensions the rankings are measuring. Large variation of ranking positions of a particular institution in various rankings indicates its unbalanced performance in the different dimensions measured. The impacts of rankings, there's many summaries, articles on this, on the impacts of rankings. I just give a very brief summary of myself. Pushing at institutions to compete globally. This is actually the very original purpose of our ranking, to find the gap between Chinese universities and world-class universities, to then pushing institutions or Chinese universities to compete globally, help them to identify strengths and weaknesses in the global context. The second impact is stimulating governments to set strategic goals, reshape their national priorities, and establish excellence initiatives. So because of the rankings or international competition, actually now there are about more than 40 countries have some kind of so-called excellence initiatives to build world-class universities. So a lot more funding are put into these universities, informing students, their parents, and other stakeholders to make choices of their study and recruitment. This is, of course, the most popular use or impact of rankings. The challenges by rankings, of course, there's many criticism on the limitations of rankings. The first challenge is possibly unbalanced distribution of resources and policy supports among various types and levels of higher education institutions. There's always a big debate in China, in many other countries, why you put so many resources into this small number of universities in the excellence initiatives. Personally, I think this is a good policy for, at least for big countries. For small countries, you have just a small number of universities, then you differentiate these universities may not be a good idea, but for big countries have a large system of higher education, I think this is a good policy. The second limitation or challenge is the possibly unbalanced emphasis on research, which could undermine other missions of higher education institutions. Yes, there's always a debate for this, but it depends on the decision or policy of university leaders. The third challenge is possibly unbalanced focus on quick performance indicators instead of quality itself. Again, it depends on the policy of university leaders. The uses of rankings. Rankings are more information tools and quality instruments for different purposes. ranking methodologies should be read carefully before using their results. The second is for any kind of decision making, rankings should be used as only one source of information on performance analysis. Other tools are always necessary. Myself, my experience is I was director for strategic planning for my university for 8 years. I always use benchmarking of university at the institution level and benchmarking at the college, school level, also departmental level, to find our strength and weakness, not just looking at the ranking positions. Universities should focus on improving the quality of education, research, and service while paying attention to ranking positions. You have to pay attention to ranking positions, but your focus should be quality of education and research and service. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Nianchai, for your presentation. It's very refreshing, which you have outlined some of your inner thoughts of why you decided to start this effort, which now everyone recognizes it's having global implications for higher education, especially in Asia. Next, I'd like to invite Nancy to present. Nancy, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Darshan. It's really a great pleasure to be here today. I really appreciate the opportunity to share with you my views and thoughts on university rankings. So as Ling Tai mentioned, university rankings started 2 years ago, and there are now over 20 global university ranking reports or organizations. Now, they're quite diverse, each with its own positioning, focus, methodology, data sources, and indicators. Now, rankings was initially established, to provide a means to compare the strengths and quality of different institutions, but the results can vary substantially depending on the ranking system used, as Ling Tai already mentioned in his opening remarks. But still, rankings have become a very important measure of performance and quality globally. Now, there are several key forces that drive the expansion and the influence of rankings. Rankings actually came about at a time when higher education was experiencing accelerating globalization, including the significant rise of emerging economies that were becoming increasingly affluent. The push for better accountability in the allocation of public resources also is another factor. Governments, they want to see tangible results of their investments. Increase student and faculty mobility, in part due to globalization, and also the battle for talents have given rise to the need for rankings in order to inform the stakeholders about the various institutions. And another key factor is the massification of education. Now, rankings have become a very powerful platform on how external stakeholders, including students, parents, alumni, companies, governments, how they view the institutions. So rankings actually can build the brand visibility and also the reputation. It can also influence the partnerships. And it is also a major factor in talent recruitment. It drives the university choice. It serves as a benchmark for performance, and it can shape the policy outcomes. It can also affect the opinions of different stakeholders. For example, student and parents, they rely on rankings in order to select institutions. Students and alumni, they feel pride when their alma mater have a higher ranking. And companies, they would prefer to hire graduates from top rank universities. And governments, they refer to rankings to evaluate the quality of their institutions and the allocation of resources. Now, I just want to give you an example of a local government scheme called the Research Talent Hub funding program, where they require the candidates to have graduated from institution that is ranked among the top 100 institutions globally. So this is one example of the impact of university rankings on the allocation of resources. Now, rankings can also impact on a university's strategic planning. For example, it can influence resource allocation. In order to keep up with the ranking, universities might invest heavily in areas that can improve or maintain their rankings, such as recruiting star professors with high citations. It can also influence the institutional activities. For example, universities might align their activities with indicators that are very much valued by ranking organizations, and hence they might lose sight of their core mission. It can also influence the strategic direction of institutions if the major ranking criteria are being featured in the strategic planning process of institutions. Another impact is that universities very often use rankings in order to identify the collaboration partners. So is ranking perfect? Well, I believe that rankings have become so important that they can impact every facet of a university's core mission, from serving as targets to strive for, to playing a very important role in exploring collaboration opportunities with other institutions. But rankings do not accurately reflect an institution's excellence and also the ability to generate impact. So how a university create value to the community, how it impacts the society, actually is not easily captured through a general set of criteria in the ranking system. So as leaders, I believe that we must recognize rankings for what they are, but we need to understand their limitations. That is what they do and what they do not measure. So universities must interpret the results with caution. We can use rankings as a benchmark for performance, but it is limited. Rankings should not be the dominant driver of an institute's strategic plans, and it should not be chased at the expense of an institute's core mission. I believe the primary focus for every institute should be to develop their own uniqueness based on their own vision and mission. So finally, we all recognize that university rankings are very influential, so they cannot be ignored. But rankings must never place constraints on us, on the universities, to fit into an idealized mode. So rankings, I believe, should continue to evolve to include other dimensions of excellence. For example, the ability of an institute to be innovative, to connect with and impact the local communities, to engage with our partners from global companies to local communities in order to create invaluable outcomes for society. So I believe that for current and future generations to thrive, we do need a flourishing higher education sector comprising really a spectrum of institutions in order to serve the diverse needs of our students, as well as enable the development of different forms of impact to enhance our world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nancy. Your presentation gives one a very interesting perspective of understanding how such a young and vibrant, maybe even world-class now university like HKUST impacted by rankings. I always remember that HKUST is only 30 years old, whereas Oxford is 1,000. So just like what Nian Chai had done, your presentation has given the audience much food for thought. So I'm sure that people are now going to gather their thoughts and ask you questions. Last but not least, may I invite Rainey to present her discussion.
Okay, thank you, Dashwan. So you can see my slide clearly. Okay, so thank you for the opportunity. First, I agree with Nancy. She put everything very nicely in the last few slides. But this is our perspective. Institut Teknologi Bandung, we have different contexts. Yeah. So the first few slides, I would like to explain to our audience about the context of Institut Teknologi Bandung. So where is it? You know, some of you probably haven't heard about ITB, Institut Teknologi Bandung. It's in Indonesia. It's 275 million population. So it's a huge country and archipelago. So we are in thousands of islands. And Bandung is not in the capital. It's about 2-hour drive from our capital city of Jakarta. We are not very big. We are focused on 4 pillars: science, technology, art, and management, and some humanity. But we are 103 years old. We comprise of 3 campuses, but small campuses, 20 hectares, 40, 70 hectares, and they are far away from each other. So it's very challenging to manage 3 separate campuses far away from each other with integrated management. But that is our main priority nowadays. So these are our campus, very old buildings. This is Ganesha campus in the city of Bandung, in the inner city, only 29 hectares. And we have observatorium in Lembang, about 30 minutes drive from Bandung. It's 100 years old. We commemorated the centennial anniversary just a couple weeks ago. This is another facility in Ganesha campus, and this is Jatinangor, about a 1-hour drive from Ganesha campus. This is our second one, and this is the newest one in Cirebon, about 2.5 hours from where my office is. And this is we focus on local knowledge and local needs in craft and maritime issues. And this is the new development. We try to be like the other great universities, top universities. We strive for strengthening our innovation. So the government helped us build innovation parks. So we have one small one very close to our main campus. This is a innovation park in Ganesha, and the other one is in about 1-hour drive for our campus. So the first phase, only building 1 and 2 from this picture, to be completed hopefully next year. So that is basically what we have. This is the facts and figures. Our student body is about 24,000 and academic staff 1,400. So now what? After 100 years, we think that we should be the knowledge exchange center. We should be the hub, national hub, and possibly, hopefully, also for the regional hub in knowledge exchange center. And what we mean by knowledge exchange is the give and take of people, capacities, ideas between university and its partners. So we really hope to be able to be an effective hub for national and regional needs. So how about our view on ranking? So again, I agree completely with Nancy. Public opinion, especially in Indonesia, it's very strong. So like it or not, we have to, deliver. However, we have to balance between what the public opinion and about our local mandates. We believe and we understand that the ranking or the rating provide useful proxy. So we do make that as an input. So we take it seriously. And also we put more serious understanding on few ranking system. So not all of them. Nancy identified there are 20, more than 20 systems, but we pay more attention to just the few more reputable rankers. And how do we do that? I think we have to focus on our identity, our reputation, and international research networks. And how do we do that? Identity, we have to improve our digital presence, and reputation, we need to strengthen our local impacts, our role in solving national problems, and international research network by, showing our international partners that we are in the same playing field. So we work on international accreditation since 2009 with, this is not cheap, yeah, but we strive to do this because I think this is very important for ITB. So we work on our biggest asset, our network. This is, we put very strong emphasis. This is very interesting. So just last year, we moved 68 places. We didn't really expect it, but somebody from the QS, Mr. Benstower, he pointed out that ITB did some substantial improvement, not cosmetically, but we did improve our performance gradually because we did improvement in our management. So for the next years, our strategy for global recognition, we do put some metrics. I mean, I'm not lying. We do some metrics on what we want to achieve, and we target a top-tier joint scientific publication. And also we dedicate a task force to work on this, but this is internal. We don't pay consultant. And most notably is the improvement of our digital presence. So bottom line is, we would like to be the hub, the knowledge exchange center, by doing these three fundamental issues: human capital management, and the second is integration of university management system, information system, especially with these three separate faraway campuses. And number 3 is promoting excellent research culture. So we would like to have the culture in place in ITB. So thank you for the time. We will discuss some of the issues later. Thank you, Dashwan.
Thank you very much, Rainey. This is very comprehensive. Since I'm the moderator, I'm going to take this opportunity to ask a question that's on my mind for a long, long time. From a ranking perspective, many of the Asian universities are now standing almost, and maybe some are already, shoulder to shoulder with the traditional Western universities powerhouses. Yet, to the mind of the people, especially in Asia Pacific, it is still difficult to think that the top Asian universities are completely on the same wavelength with the traditional powerhouses in the West, especially the United States and UK. What should one do to overcome this mindset challenge? Or is that even necessary? Why don't I ask Nancy to start with this answer?
Well, I believe that we all recognize university rankings are very popular among stakeholders, and for good reason, right? I mean, the 3 panelists have mentioned this already in their opening remarks. And in the past decade, you know, well-known Asian universities, they have been making a steady ascension into the top echelons of the various ranking systems. So, Dashun, as you mentioned, you know, this has been happening, and so, you know, it is a good sign. Now, the mindset, you know, about these, you know, renowned Asian universities still not on par with the traditional ones. I would say, you know, I would not think too much of it, in the sense that, as I mentioned earlier, you know, universities really should use the rankings as a benchmark, as a reference point for us, but not to you know, lose sight of our core mission and you know, the mandate of the university, you know, what we should do. So I do not think that you know, this is something that we should really need to change the mindset. In fact, if you look at the Times Higher Education rankings this year, Asia is the most represented continent with a large number of universities. I remember it's over 600 of us. We participate in the ranking exercise, you know, out of a total of 1,700 universities. So this is indicating that, you know, Asian universities are taking an interest in the ranking. But as I mentioned earlier, you know, this should be just for benchmarking, because there are many metrics that should be included in the ranking system that are not. So it is something for us to consider, you know, how it should evolve in the future. Thank you.
The other two, would you like to make some comments about this?
Okay, Rainey. Wira Hadi Kusuma. Okay, Dashwan. Just last week, my colleagues just visited campuses in Singapore, and the equipments, the labs, very, you know, very up to date, very excellent, impressive. So my colleagues feel discouraged a bit, you know. So our confidence level dropped 1 or 2 points, you know. So, but I tell them, we've been in this position for many years. I mean, we've never been fortunate with so many excellent equipment, but we can make up with what we have. So we have the strength to be the problem solver for local needs. So we should be proud. But it doesn't stop there. We are trying to gain the trust of our international partners to do joint research with us, joint publication with us, and let us use their equipments so that they also feel that we are on par with them. So some of our faculty are very reputable and trusted by our partners. So yeah, so I think pretty soon, once international community, especially in the more developed countries, once they get to know us better, they would give us better respect, I think. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. I'm sure for all the non-Indonesian participants of today's discussion, your narrative about ITB is actually more than ITB. It's actually about Indonesia in general.
Yes, yes. Presenting Indonesia. Yeah,
that's right. There is no question. ASEAN, or Association for Southeast Asian Nations, is one of the fastest growing powerhouses in the world. And Indonesia, with some 230 million people, is the titan of ASEAN. And so I look forward to this dialogue with Indonesian higher education more and more. I think that it will be very exciting. Yan-Chai, would you like to make some comments, since this is one of your big, this is all your brainchild?
Thanks, Daja. I just add that, of course, the rankings, as I mentioned in the opening presentation, rankings are only measuring some dimensions of universities. So the rankings, the positions or performance of different countries, only as an indication of the performance of those dimensions. There's one particular dimension that is not measured at all, I would say, is national contribution in the rankings. For university, as just discussed, for Indonesian university or Chinese universities, they are making a lot of contribution for the development of their country, but that is not mentioned in the rankings at all. But that is extremely important for the countries. That's one thing. Another point is that world-class universities should make more contributions to solve problems facing the world, like environment, pandemic, all those things, which is called now, in the last few years, we call it global common good. The world-class university should contribute more global common good, and other universities should contribute more to the nations. Thank you very much, Dr.
No, that's excellent, excellent. Let's see. We have a guest from Mexico, the Monterrey Tech. Is he online, Max? Oh, Ricardo, are you online?
Thank you. Yes,
you have a very interesting. You have an interesting question. Go ahead.
Thank you, Professor.
We need to see your face also.
I have some. Yes, sorry. Do you hear me?
We can hear you, but we cannot see you.
Sorry. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, well, go ahead. Go ahead. Let's not waste time. Go ahead. Ask your question. Oh, you're muted.
Okay.
Ah.
Yes,
excellent.
I got it. Greetings from Mexico, my colleagues. How are you?
Hi.
Go ahead. Ask your question.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity to ask you, to the panelists. We are now in the last years reflect about the how we can measure the impact of the university beyond the typical scientiometrics indicators. I mean, the reflection is how we can identify, how we can define some others indicators that we capture the impact, the true impact, the right impact in terms of the social impact of the university activity, the environment impact, and the regional development. What do you think? What do you recommend us to measure in beyond the typical? I mean, the transfer technology, patents, license, startups, entrepreneurship activity, etc. What is your opinion, in your perspective?
Yanchai, why don't you start?
Thanks. That's an interesting question, but a very difficult and challenging one. In terms of rankings, it's really difficult to measure impact of university globally because there's no available data, or quite often some indicators are not comparable at all across the nations. So it's very difficult and very challenging. But if we are not doing a ranking of the impact of university globally, then there's some ways to measure the impact of a particular university or university in a country. I just give you a quick example. We are trying, my group, research group, my team are trying to do impact. Of course, we are doing globally. First we do the visibility research on the visibility of world-class universities by calculating or checking their appearance in major global media, including social media, of course, and also by calculating or counting the major research results, not research results, it's related research, major world problems the university are solving or contributing. For example, during the pandemic, Johns Hopkins University was contributing a lot by that map. Yes. The map is just stopped, right? But that helped the world a lot.
Absolutely.
So I just very simple example. So if you are doing a very small scale study, then that's possible. If you do a global ranking, that's I would say now for the moment impossible. Thank you.
You know, we have two presidents here. I remember in 2003, was it? You have your first World University Conference in Shanghai, which you invited me, Yanchai. I made a comment there at that time when you did your first ranking. Places like Peking University was very lowly ranked, obviously, because using the kind of data that you presented. I always thought that it's very interesting that Peking University has a very famous president called Cai Yuanpei.
Yes.
And Cai Yuanpei, because of his leadership, China changed the so-called May 4th movement, 五四运动, and also the 白话运动, all came out of Peking University. And that influenced the entire China's population for now more than 100 years. So when you have presidents of such leadership that can make this sort of changes and the university is not highly ranked, then something is wrong with the ranking. I don't know how people felt about this particular case. Nancy, would you like to say something?
Well, I think we discussed, right? The ranking systems are not perfect, right? So they emphasize often on certain aspects of the institution, but we we are very delighted that, for Asian universities to be recognized in the last decade. I think it really speaks volume, to the fact that the research accomplishment in Asian universities are, getting better and better. And I think, again, this helps a lot with the collaborations with other institutions. It really improves our research reputation. Because the ranking actually reflect that in recent years. Now, to the question that was asked, about what else can we do? I agree with Lin Tai that this is a very difficult task. Currently, the metrics are very much focused on the research accomplishment. So a lot of these impacts, that cannot be measured easily, because the ranking system, cannot accommodate this one-size-fits-all mentality. So there has to be other metrics that would allow the recognition of these achievements at the local level, at the national level. And it is a big task that I think, this panel probably cannot achieve that. But we need to recognize, the impact of an institution on the society. The institutions, has a third mission, of course, and that is, how we can make impact on the society to benefit mankind.
Absolutely. That's very, very astute observation. Mike Liu, are you online? Mike Liu? Mike? Well, okay. One of Nancy's friend.
Mike is online. Mike is online. Sorry.
Okay. Let him ask his question.
Let's see. Actually, I think he's just offline. I'll let him ask a question once he rejoins.
Okay. All right. We have another Ip here, who I know is a friend of Nancy. I don't think they're related. Albert Ip. Albert, are you there? Okay.
Yes, yes. He just need to 1 second. I need to promote them as a speaker, so it takes a little while.
Okay. Well, meanwhile, let me ask for Mike his question. Okay. Mike asked this following. Mike, go ahead. You ask your question. Also tell people who you are.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me. I'm the Vice President, also Senior Fellow at the Center for China and Globalization. It is my great honor to join this, great discussion. I'm really enjoying. It's really refreshing. And actually, professors have already partially answered my question because, on the one hand, having a globally applied ranking system has been difficult. On the other hand, these numbers is simply so influenced for those high school graduate, even for people from outside the other country to apply, say, if I want to go to Indonesia and try to figure out which university is better than others, right? So how are we, the professor, presidents, and the educators, how we can put up a so-called less biased ranking system, this in some proper perspective to guide those high school or less educated or less knowledge applicants to make a right decision. I know this is very tough, but I think it's also very relevant.
Okay. Who is volunteering with an answer?
Okay, I will. Okay. Thanks, Mike. I'm from Indonesia. So because you mentioned Indonesia in your comment, I don't want to say that to high school students to go to ITB. ITB is the best. That is not what I'm saying to every question, because there are so many good universities, and it should be very suiting with everyone's needs and condition, I think. So I think we have to educate the public and the stakeholders about the meaning of this ranking system as we are doing now. So I've been saying this in many events about the meaning and how do you interpret this ranking system. So we have to educate the public, the stakeholders, I think, and we try to make more open houses and webinars, talks like that, educating the public about what ITB is. I don't want students to come to us because of the ranking, and once they got here, this young students, I'm in the wrong place kind of thing, because this is not for everybody. The reputation is of course great, but not for everybody. So I believe everyone should go into the open houses of the potential schools that they would like to go. Yeah.
Any more comments from the other two?
I just want to echo what Rainy mentioned. It is so important to educate the stakeholders, because the ranking systems, they have limitations. They are rather subjective and they focus on certain parameters. And so the rankings outcome, I think, need to be interpreted with caution. And the stakeholders need to understand, what are the limitations, and not just look at the rankings outcome on the face value. So it is a very important point. I totally agree with.
Very good. Here's an interesting question. As a scientist, we know that whenever one makes a measurement, which ranking is a measurement, one needs to give an error bar to the measurement. That is sort of standard procedure. Yet ranking does not do that. There is never, when you're given number 24, you are better than number 25, or not as good as number 23. Is this a shortcoming of the ranking methodology, or is there a way to overcome this? Let me ask this is a good question for Nian Chai, I think.
Yeah, Nian Chai, please explain.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it is a good question. Yes, up to now, there's no rankings to do this kind of error bar, but there's a literature, published literature analyzing rankings, have done some kind of analysis of error bar on the different rankings anyway. But that's not, very popular. That's read only by very few researchers anyway. From my experience of ranking, because of that consideration, from the very beginning of our ranking, academic ranking of world universities, we actually published the universities, of course, the first 50 by numeric order, but then in different groups of 51 to 75 or 100 to 200, because we recognize that the differences in the final score of those group of universities differences are not very significant. I mean, among the group of universities, let's say between 101 to 200 or 401 to 500. That's what we did from the very beginning. But unfortunately, university leaders quite often ask us where we are, what's the exact precise position of my university? Is 153 or, but we say, no, that's not our purpose. Our purpose is among the group of 100 to 200. So maybe that's our experience. Thank you.
Well, what about the idea, since there are over 20 rankings now, and each ranking has a different sandbox of playing this game, and each ranking would give a particular point for a particular university. Presumably, if you're Harvard, you're always about one or two or three. So that means your spread is 2 plus or minus 1. Whereas some other universities, you could be in one ranking is maybe 50 and the other ranking could be 100. So you might be 75 plus or minus 25. Is this a possibility? Since there are so many rankings, if you put them together, that sort of provide a error bar. Would that be something of possibility? Anyone?
I think if you take various ranking systems and try to come up with a number and with the error bars, it's definitely better than just taking one ranking system, in my view. Another point that I want to make is that we should not just look at 1 year, because rankings, right, they go up and down. So fluctuations are normal, right, for a university. So if we have a more sort of longitudinal view, to take the ranking outcome over a number of years, I think that would give us a better indication than looking at a particular year, what the ranking is in that particular year. I think universities sometimes, panic if they see that the ranking drop in a particular year, but maybe the next year already it goes back up. So it is the ranking one gets within a certain duration, a certain number of years, that I think would be a better reflection of the position.
Okay. Albert, are you still there? Albert.
So now, okay.
Okay, go ahead.
You cannot see me, but that's okay. I think.
Well, we want to see you.
No, that's okay. I am. To give an introduction, I was a banker, and Darshan and I worked together at Macau University, and lately I'm learning from Nancy on university matters. But the question I have, which again, the methodology probably cannot accommodate, which Nancy put it in her presentation, saying that companies rely on ranking for their talent acquisition, meaning students, and also parents and students rely on banking to choose universities. However, students who move on to work in companies like myself, banks and hotel, may demand different things than students who move on to PhD and whatnot. Rankings, however, are mostly centered on research, and I think probably difficult to consider teaching, and good research professors may not be good at teachings, i.e. transforming knowledge to students. How can ranking look at quality of teaching? I know it's difficult, but maybe easier. Should tenure of a professor consider teaching standard rather than only research, which most of the deans and presidents, when I asked them, they said they always look at teaching, and but when it gets down to it, it may not be. So it's a general question. Sorry for the length. Thank you, Darshan.
Okay. Who wants to take on this interesting question?
Okay, me. I I don't agree about professors that are good in research are bad teachers. I think most of the time they are both. If you find the busiest people on campus, he is the one who are highly sought by students. They would like to be engaged with him in research, in projects, in his reputation, and then getting his recommendation to get best work either in academia or in industry. So I agree. They don't teach well because probably they don't have enough time. But I believe they are our stars. Yeah. So of course we have to put more emphasis on teaching. But we also have a rating on employability ranking, right? Like how well our graduate is received by the industry. I think that is also very good indicator, and we follow that indication for our improvement also. Yeah, thank you, Albert.
So I do agree wholeheartedly that very often our best teachers are the best researchers. They somehow go hand in hand. So for those who are, very research productive, they are also very often very good teachers. So I echo that comment. And I also believe that really preparing our young people, our students, by giving them the knowledge, by providing them with the skill sets for their career paths. I mean, this has to be at the heart of the institutions, and it is very important for us to emphasize on this. How do we help the students through teaching to earn the skills and the credentials that they will need after graduation, and so this is an aspect that we need to think hard. How the ranking system can allow us to achieve that. To evaluate how the institutions perform in preparing our graduates for their career path. How can they contribute to the society? I think this is the fundamental question that we all need to think through, how we can do that. So thanks, Albert, for raising that question. I do think that currently the ranking system, sometimes they often focus on research, focus on internationalization, which I totally agree are very important parameters. But let's not forget, this core mission of the university, which is to educate our young people.
I think there's I have always a very interesting story about this. My good friend Alan McDermott, who won the Nobel Prize in chemistry in year 2000 at the University of Pennsylvania. Unfortunately, he died in 2007. But anyway, for the 30 or 40 years when he was teaching at the University of Pennsylvania, he told me every year he insisted that he be the professor to teach the freshman chemistry. If I cannot get these young guys early on, by the time they become juniors and seniors, they're gone. So he wanted to excite them. And he was one of the best teachers at the University of Pennsylvania, year in and year out. The next person is my good friend, who also a co-founder of DAU, Tan Chai, president of NUS. He has a question.
Thank you, Ta-Xuan and panel members, for sharing on such an interesting topic. My question or comment is really related to the earlier question that rankings are invariably mostly focused on research. And I fully agree with Nancy and Rennie that universities have many missions: education, manpower training, impact to society. All these are very important missions, but much harder to capture in a ranking. All right, research data are easily available, and so that becomes a sort of a readily accessible data for ranking. Now, if you look at the rankings, especially the prominent ones like THE and QS, the Chinese universities have risen dramatically, I guess, in the last 10 years. And one of the reasons that we can sort of surmise from this rise is really the increase in research intensity, right? And earlier, Rennie mentioned that universities should be seen as engines of economic development, all right? And that's where research and innovation will be very important. So are we able to convince our governments to put enough resources to universities, especially for university research, right? I think if you look at what the Chinese government has done, the proportion on R&D by PRC China has increased dramatically. And I think it's likely to increase to 3% of GDP, right? And it is actually concentrated in their very top universities, like what is happening in many countries. So are we able to convince our governments to put more money on research and development? Thank you.
Wow, who wants to volunteer?
Maybe I asked. Thank you for the question. I do believe that in Hong Kong, the Hong Kong SAR government has been increasing quite substantially the research funding for the university. Of course, we cannot compare ourselves with the universities in the mainland. I think that the scale of funding support for mainland universities are definitely much higher than that in Hong Kong. But nonetheless, I think with Hong Kong being positioned in the 14th Five-Year Plan as an international innovation and technology hub, the Hong Kong SAR government has been increasing the research funding for the universities, because in today's higher education environment, we not only focus on education and knowledge creation, but also on how to translate our findings to innovations and applications and bring these to the society in order to have an impact on the society. So funding is absolutely critical to do that. And I agree with Rennie that universities has a very important role. Universities should be the engine for innovation. And there are many successful examples globally where you see universities playing this kind of leading role and having an impact on the society. So again, for our university, for HKUST, we actually have put a lot of emphasis on entrepreneurship since the establishment of the university, and we have an excellent track record by nurturing more than 1,600 startups, and also nurture 9 unicorns and 8 IPOs. And this is only possible because the government is supportive of this, and the society has this kind of culture. So I think going forward with increased funding to support R&D, we'll be able to increase our emphasis on societal impact of our academic research. Thank you.
it seems to me that the discussion that Enchai and Nancy have been emphasizing here is the economic impact of higher education on society. I don't know whether you know this data. About 10 years ago, there must be newer data now. Of the companies in the Boston area, some 70% comes from MIT graduates.
Yes.
So that is fantastic, but very few universities could do that. In fact, MIT might be the only one. Even Harvard cannot do that. So
well, but Stanford did it.
Well,
I think,
Stanford, yeah. Stanford and MIT may be the two, but it's not universal. You know, for example, at University of Texas at Austin, which is a big school, they have over 30 lawyers for the tech transfer office. Okay, and every year the amount of money that they can bring in from technology transfer is just not comparable to the government research funding. So I think it's a complex question, and how government can practice Bayh-Dole Act. You know, some of you probably may have heard of this. In 1980, Senator Bayh and Senator Doe basically said, universities, intellectual property, you can have it. We don't want it. So all of a sudden, tech transfer became a big subject in universities. So I'm assuming that China now has a Bayh-Dole Act, and Indonesia must be thinking about a Bayh-Dole Act. Hong Kong must have its own relative Bayh-Dole Act, and so on.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think we should be able to convince the government much better by with metrics. So we should recruit a consultant to write a study on the impact of several universities in Indonesia, and then show it to the higher up, and then show them that with this low investment you can get this much, and then let's imagine how much we can multiply if you put more investment, kind of thing. Yeah, so yeah, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna make a study. I'm gonna make a report, so, convincing report. Yeah.
So this is having a real impact here.
Actually, can I just add?
Absolutely, please.
Something? Okay.
Please.
Thank you. I think I just mentioned about the Chinese government is investing a lot on R&D. Of course, mentioned also about technology transfer. Yes, is prospering in Chinese universities. Another point is actually the government, Chinese government, set. I'm not sure it's more than 100. I think it's 100, at least 100 university science and technology park around the universities to do technology transfer. There's a lot of special policies and supports for these university science and technology park. There's another thing. Just recently, I think it's last month or this month, the Chinese government released a policy to attract international companies, foreign investment, to invest in R&D in China. That's a major initiative, not only encouraging Chinese universities to do R&D, to do technology transfer, to set a university science technology park, but also a special policy initiatives to attract foreign companies to invest in Chinese R&D. Thank you.
Yes.
I just want to add a comment on that. I think this is a very important move, because if you want to promote innovation and technology, you have to have an ecosystem. And so the ecosystem needs to be comprised of not only startups, which will, which are being nurtured by the universities, based on the research findings, based on the translation of these findings. But importantly, you also need to have anchor companies or companies that are perhaps more mature, and this will create the ecosystem that is needed in order for it to be successful. So I fully support this kind of policy. Not only to set up the innovation and technology parks near the university, similar to what was being done in Boston, but also to recruit outside companies to join. Then it would become it would have a very vibrant environment with this mix of startups and also more mature companies.
What is the ecosystem in Indonesia now of this question?
Yes, so we are in the initial stage of that innovation park. Like my presentation earlier, in ITB we have one small innovation park, and then we are building the other one. And in ITB, it is one of the 3 innovation park funded by the government. So they understand the demand for that, for getting industry R&D very close to campuses. So the 3 university, Indonesia, ITB, and Bogor, we got funded nowadays. I mean, right now, ongoing construction. Yeah.
Very good. We have someone online now, Merle Surappa. You have a question. Go ahead. You have to unmute.
Thank you. Good morning, Professor Feng.
Who are you?
Yeah, I'm a professor. I'm Surappa, Professor Surappa. I'm the former director of IIT Ropar, at which time I had some correspondence because some of my students at that time met you when you were in I think you were in South Korea or something like that. Okay. Now later on I became the vice chancellor of the Anna University. I have a lot of interest in this ranking, impact, limitations, and I'm writing some papers and all. Now I've been looking at the research excellence part of it, how more accurately you can bring research excellence, of an individual and the institution, and eventually to the country. Now, the Stanford has come out with a ranking. The Stanford affiliates, people working in the Stanford University, they have come out with linking, listing a top 1% scientist, 1 lakh scientist, and also top 2% scientist. And all these scientists and the institutions and the country are listed in this ranking. Now, in that ranking, they consider 6 parameters, 6 scientometric parameters, rather than depending upon number of publications, H index, or just on a single parameter.
What is your question?
My question is, the way in which they have ranked the scientist within top 1 lakh scientists, and the institutions which have these scientists of this kind of a ranking, and if that can be integrated with the general ranking in the research quality of the ranking, where the various ranking agencies, platforms link the quality of the research publications based on the citations and things like that. If we can integrate this one, it could be a better indication of a research excellence of an institution and a country. Okay, it will give, because that Stanford ranking comprises 6, and they have tested that one with various Nobel laureates, number of people, excellent scientists, their contributions, and found out that the combination of 6 parameters is a better indicator of a research excellence rather than any one parameter like this.
Great. Yantai, this obviously is for you.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. Yes, it's a good idea. Actually, our ranking, we have 6 indicators. 2 of them are about scientists. One is Nobel laureates. One is highly cited researchers. Actually, these 2 numbers, the number of these 2 kinds of scientists are relatively smaller than the scientists you just mentioned, the list. That's a much larger number. It could be used in rankings, of course. There's no problem, depends. But for our ranking, one of the features of our ranking is a stable methodology. For the last 20 or 19 years, there's no change of methodology. So you can compare, every university can compare for the last 20 years, the performance. But other rankings or any new rankings can include those list of scientists, no problem. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're coming to the end of our time here. So maybe I would ask the 3 distinguished guests to come up with your final thoughts. Why don't we have Rainey? What are your final thoughts?
Okay, what is my final thought? Okay, so I think just try to understand our institution better. I mean, self-assessment is the most important. You know, we need to know our weaknesses and strengths, and we work on our strength, emphasize on that, and then try to be, you know, give more impact benefits to our society based on our strength.
Very good. Nancy, your final thoughts?
Well, I guess we all agree that rankings really have become a major factor. That
whether you like it or not.
Yeah, whether we like it or not, it has a huge impact on the higher education. Absolutely. And we cannot afford to ignore rankings, right. But we must stay true to our university mission. We cannot just, you know, change our path in order to attain that by chasing, you know, good rankings. And so, so I guess my final thought would be that we should not forget the soul of our institution, and we should concentrate on what matters. So in, you know, at the end of the day, we really need to have a diversity of, you know, a spectrum of higher education institutions that can serve the diverse needs of the world that we now live in.
I love this this word soul. You just used the best word for tonight, the soul of the university. Yan-Chai, your final thoughts?
Thank you. As just said, rankings are staying here. It will not disappear. We have to pay attention to rankings, but we really need to focus on the main missions of universities, teaching, research, and of course also service to the country, particularly in China. As the dean of the School of Education, I'm really not paying much attention on rankings at all, because I believe if we do good, perform good on our missions of teaching, research, and service, our rankings, ranking performance will improve. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I think this has been a very exciting conversation. This will not be the end of this conversation. I hope this will only be the beginning of a dialogue in Asia's higher education. And as Renee say, we need to transfer this sort of urgency of how important is higher education to the truly stakeholders, that means the government certainly for public universities, they need to really understand why does a country needs universities? You know, I always ask the question, imagine Indonesia does not have ITB. What will Indonesia be like?
Wow.
Imagine Hong Kong without
Yes.
HKUST.
Yes.
What will Hong Kong be like? Yeah, you say there's Hong Kong U, but one university, you know, universities has a fundamental reason of existence, and their existence is to make humanity a better place. And okay, and I hope that ranking will sort of give rise to this sort of flavor in the future. Max, do you want to say a few words before we close?
No, Dasha, I think you said it all. I couldn't make it any better. But thank you for everyone's time and you know, all the attendees as well from different parts of the world.
Oh yeah, this is really all over the world. And by the way, this is recorded and we will send it out to thousands and thousands of people all over the world.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank
we'll
you.
also be sending out a post-dialogue survey just to get your thoughts on this dialogue. If you have a minute or two, please fill that out. Your feedback will be very, very important to us. Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.